Get out your scorecard and follow along. It's time for our Big Ten Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football, completing Week 9, looking forward to Week 10 and another huge set of matchups in the league. All right, these are the Power Rankings based on the resume, based on my thoughts, based on everything put together. And again, certainly leave your comments and questions down below, like the video, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. At number 18 in the Big Ten is the worst team in the conference, of course, and that belongs to Purdue. They had that one glimmer of hope a couple weeks ago. They almost pulled out the win at Illinois against a decent Illini team, and they couldn't pull off the two-point play. They lost 50-49 in overtime. Unfortunately, they had to run into the buzzsaw that is the Oregon Ducks immediately the next week. I would have loved to have seen them build off of that strong effort against Illinois, with Ryan Brown at quarterback, who threw for 300 yards and rushed for over 100 against the Illini. But again, they ran into the Oregon buzzsaw. Now they get a bye week for the stretch drive. Let's see if Ryan Walters has found something with a new quarterback at Purdue. At number 18, Purdue, boiler up! Since Greg Schiano took over for a second time at Rutgers in 2020, just about everything has projected up. The trajectory has been higher and higher until now. Rutgers is just flat out a bad football team. They were completely outclassed at the LA Coliseum against USC, losing 42-20. It wasn't that close. The game was over in the first quarter, and this was not Rutgers football. Ethan Kalkimanis having to throw the ball 47 times. That's not Rutgers football. Giving up 6 yards per carry on the ground defensively. That's not Rutgers football. Giving up 28 points in the first half again. Completely outclassed on a downslide after starting out at 4-0. They have lost to just about everybody in the Big Ten. Aside from that, close win against Washington. They have looked awful in recent weeks. At number 17 in the Big Ten, Scarlet Knights. Heading to Lincoln, Nebraska after the bye week, UCLA's got a little mojo working. Ethan Garber's back in the lineup, throwing for 5 touchdowns in his last performance as UCLA got off the snide and defeated the aforementioned Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Before that, at the Rose Bowl, UCLA giving a good effort before they lost in the final 27 seconds against Minnesota. Yes, they are just 2-5, but with their first win in their history of the Big Ten, UCLA. Much like Greg Schiano at Rutgers, Mike Locksley has been building this Maryland program step by step, block by block. 3 consecutive bowl wins, consecutive 8-win seasons, now a big bump in the road. Check that. Make it a crater in the road. Maryland football is not good. 90 seconds away from being 0-5 in the Big Ten. They could have gained some momentum, built off of that comeback win against USC in which they trailed by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but no. One big thud at Minnesota, giving up a 48-23 win against the Gophers. And for Maryland football, again, they are 90 seconds away from being 0-5, and they were completely dismantled in this game against Minnesota. At number 15 in the Big Ten, the Terps. Now we take a stop at the final truly bad team, just awful team in the Big Ten, and that's David Braun's Northwestern team. The first-year magic is gone, and it has disappeared completely. They were completely out-muscled, outclassed by Iowa this past weekend. They led this game at 7-5 after a pick 6, but the offense scored nothing when it counted in a 40-14 loss. They bottled up Caleb Johnson for his first 7 carries, and then he ran wild. The rush defense in the second half was atrocious. Northwestern looking awful. They've got the one win against Maryland, 37-10. Otherwise, it's been a big beatdown by Northwestern football in the Big Ten. At number 14 in the conference, the Wildcats. Jonathan Smith can flat out coach, and he's building a competent program at Michigan State only in his first season. And the Spartans did not get it done this weekend in Jonathan Smith's first game against arch rival Michigan, but the signs are there. They came out of the gate strong. They dominated the line of scrimmage. They had 2 long drives. They should have been up 14-0. They botched one of the series with a blocked field goal after a penalty on a false start inside the 5-yard line. But Michigan State performed well in the big house. Aiden Childs is coming along. He's only 19 years old. Jonathan Smith knows how to develop quarterbacks. In Michigan State, look at the win against Iowa and look at the performance in beating Maryland. Now they play a capable game, only lose by a touchdown, a much better game than what Sparty has been able to put up against recent Michigan teams. At number 13 in the Big Ten, Sparty. When is that signature win going to come for Matt Rule in Nebraska? Forget Matt Rule. He's only responsible now for going on 2 seasons. When is that signature win going to come for Nebraska football? The type win that they used to have every other week at this football program. They, of course, have the longest bowl drought of anyone in the nation. They are only 1 win away, and they'll probably get it, of course, but it could have come in Columbus against a top 5 team in the country. This program has lost 27 consecutive games against ranked teams, and this was a top 5 team, and Nebraska had them on the ropes. So the Huskers performed well in Columbus. So is it a moral victory? But when you've stretched together this many 1-score devastating losses, it's got to really wear on this football team. But they gave it a go, and that was just 1 week after that catastrophic debacle against Indiana, losing by 7 touchdowns. So there is no doubt that this is a much better football team than they were at any point under Scott Frost. They're now 5-3. They've got UCLA this week. They're a solid favorite in the game. They just played their best game since when? Dylan Raiola. I know he's just a true freshman, and you've got to give him space. However, he's got to pull through with some throws in the clutch. He wilted down the stretch against Illinois. Did not play well against Rutgers. The Indiana game was the Indiana game. 56-7 says it all. And now against Ohio State, had he made one more throw, they might have pulled through with that 1-1 victory. At number 12 in the Big Ten, still waiting. We are waiting for that big win, GBR. After some positive signs early in the season, the lack of depth, lack of strength, size up front starting to show for the Washington Huskies. They went to Indiana, faced a backup quarterback, and could not get the job done. They got beat down from the beginning, lost 31-17. The Huskies have Will Rogers at quarterback. They're a fun team to watch. I think Jedd Fisch is a good fit at Washington, and I think that this program needs a little time to develop and marinate. And again, that Jedd Fisch will most likely build a winner, not necessarily a Big Ten contender at the top, but a winner at Washington. But for right now, it's the 11th rated team in our Big Ten power rankings right here at the Voice of College Football, Huskies. Highest ceiling, lowest floor. In one program, it's USC. And it is not surprising me by any stretch. We said it the entire offseason. If there was a wild card in the Big Ten, it would be USC. Consider that this team beat an LSU team that until this weekend was undefeated in the SEC. They also, of course, took Penn State to overtime. How many teams in the conference would do that? 2, 3, 4, maybe? But on the low side, Maryland has 1 win because of USC, and of course they blew that game against Minnesota. They have led in every game in the fourth quarter. Well, they got a break in the schedule, and they got to take on Rutgers, and they completely overwhelmed Rutgers offensively. They were just too fast, too quick, too explosive for the Scarlet Knights. At number 10 in our Big Ten power rankings, the enigmatic Lincoln Riley USC Trojans. We are right in the middle, right in the midst of our logjam in our Big Ten power rankings. Anyone could beat anyone. And at the end of the season, when we look at the Big Ten standings, we will take team about number 5 or 6 and go all the way down to team number 13 or 14 and say, they beat them, but they beat them. We've already seen it, and we're only halfway through the schedule. And the Wisconsin Badgers put up a fight against Penn State, led 14-3 in the second half. 14-13 was the score in the second half. Braden Locke, though, too inconsistent. No explosive plays in the passing game, and then threw that pick 6 that turned the game around. Wisconsin does not have the rushing attack, the offensive line that it typically does. It was a good effort. It's a decent team. Put them right there with Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, and others. Right now, we're going to put them at number 9. Even though they've got a loss against number 10 USC, they've been a little bit more consistent. And again, played a decent game against Penn State. Iowa is coming up next for the Badgers. Just a few weeks ago, Minnesota was looking like one of the worst teams in the conference. Now Minnesota is a 5-3 football team and playing extremely well, consistent football, certainly much better than Maryland. This was not a contest. Max Brosmer, 26 of 33 in his best day at this level of football with 4 touchdown passes as Minnesota dominated this game against Maryland. Now they've got a date against Illinois, and this turnaround has brought the Row Your Boaters to 3-2 in the conference. They got Illinois coming up next after the dominant performance against the Terps at number 8 in the Big Ten. Gophers. Round and round goes the Michigan quarterback wheel. Where it stops, nobody knows. On Saturday, it stopped with Davis Warren for a second time. Round 2 of Davis Warren, much better than the first round. No turnovers for Davis Warren, and of course a comeback win against Michigan State. Colston Loveland, the best offensive player on the field. Part of the game plan was 6 catches, 67 yards. Michigan looking better on offense, dominated in the first quarter, but they came back to beat Michigan State. Sharon Moore and company now have life at 5-3, and they've got a date against Oregon. At one point, Iowa fancied itself as a college football playoff contender. Those hopes are just about dashed with 3 losses, of course. Looking ahead to the future, Kirk Ferentz made a decision in a 40-14 win against Northwestern on Saturday that could bode well for 2025. Cade McNamara to the bench. Brendan Sullivan, the former Northwestern quarterback, came in and not only passed the ball a little bit better than Cade McNamara, minus the 1 or 2 interceptions, depending on how you count, but also provided the rushing threat. Caleb Johnson really provides the rushing threat. He's number 2 in the nation in rushing. The defense and the special teams, well, the defense not quite as good as it's been over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, but the special teams, remarkable. Just check out the punter, our number 6 team in the Big Ten, Iowa. Illinois is a solid football team with an excellent coach in Brett Bielema. Can we really fault them for what happened at Autzen Stadium? Oregon's just been that good for 6 consecutive weeks now. Let's make this more about Illinois. Moving forward, we saw the effort against Penn State. They've got a win in overtime against Nebraska. They've put together fine efforts every time they've been on the field this year. Out-of-conference victory against Kansas as well. Solid football team at 6-2. Hopefully they don't let this Oregon game get in their heads. Regroup, move on. They've got Minnesota coming up as a key factor in these Big Ten power rankings, right in the middle between 5 and 14. We got the Illini. The best talent in the conference does not look like the best team in the conference, and certainly on Saturday, they escaped. Ohio State 6-1 now with a 21-17 win against Nebraska, in which the offense stalled. The offensive line couldn't get the job done. 2.5 yards per carry out of Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. That can't be. Will Howard's playing well. The defense is not dominant. It's decent. It's good. It's a top half of the Big Ten defense, but that's not what was paid for. That's not what was expected. This team obviously has its goals right in front of them, and they've got a date at Happy Valley to right the wrongs at number 4 in the Big Ten. Buckeyes. Following another workmanlike win for Penn State at Wisconsin, coming back from 14-13 down, closing out the game with a 21-3 run. All eyes on the quarterback position for Penn State. Bo Prabula came in for the injured Drew Aller, played well, 11 of 13, 98 yards, and of course he's the running threat. He already plays in a number of series and packages for this Penn State offense on a regular basis, so he's not just a quarterback as a backup that sits on the bench. He's a guy that plays meaningful snaps, but he may play all the snaps. We will check and see on Drew Aller as we get closer to game day with Penn State hosting Ohio State. This Penn State team, again, not explosive, workmanlike. Check out the Illinois win, the UCLA win, and now the Wisconsin win. This is how Penn State wants to play football. Controlled passing game, a lot of rushing attack out of Nate Singleton and Katron Allen, and of course the defense can make the plays. It's one of the best defenses in the country we would expect. Jalen Reed with a big pick 6 that turned it around at Camp Randall. at number 3 in the Big Ten with an enormous game for not only this team, but this program and James Franklin. We are. Not even Oregon has shown up every week. Only this team in all of college football, not just in the Big Ten, all of college football has shown up every week. Every week. Indiana, 8 consecutive strong performances. Of course, they obliterated Nebraska 2 weeks ago. They followed that up by not letting down, even though they were missing their leader, Curtis Rourke, who's had an exceptional season at 74% completion percentage, 14 TDs and 2 picks. Taven Jackson stepped in, got the job done. They relied on the run game and the defense. They got 2 interceptions of Will Rogers. This is a complete football team, and this is one hell of a football coach, Curt Cignetti. And it's the number 2 team in the Big Ten right now, without a doubt. IU, number 1 in the Big Ten, probably number 1 in the nation. Yeah, they stumbled out of the gate with 2 consecutive poor performances against Idaho and Boise State. But since then, they have rolled through 6 opponents, and it's been impressive. They beat Ohio State, which may be the best win in the country. And, of course, they rolled an Illinois team that is solid, strong, stout. Michigan State, look how well they're performing in certain games. They rolled them with no issue. The defense is fast and tenacious. They're playing aggressive. The offensive line is strong. They've got one of the best running backs in the nation in Jordan James. They possibly could have the best wide receiver core in the nation, and Dylan Gabriel is not the most talented guy in the nation, but he may turn out to be the best at his position. Loaded. And now with a trip to Michigan to take on the Wolverines. This should be interesting to see if Oregon can once again not just come out with a win, but dominate a physically imposing team. It's the number 1 team in the Big Ten, maybe the nation. Maybe they'll win their first ever national championship. Oregon Ducks. Please leave your comments down below. And we intend on delivering power rankings for all the conferences, plus a slew of other videos to get you set for Week 10 of college football. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football.